everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Small Church Musicians Podcast. My name is Justin. I'm your host, and I'm a small church musician. I'm on a journey to find the best sounding equipment for my budget and to talk about the songs and artists that God has used to make me who I am. This week, we've got another edition of Hidden Gems, the ongoing series where I talk about a piece of gear that I think deserves more attention than it gets and that I found to be incredibly useful in a worship setting. This week, we're talking overdrive, and it's one of my top 5 favorites. A couple months ago, I put out an episode of the podcast where I talked about 5 great options for overdrive at 5 different price points, and this is one of those. This week, we're talking about the Wampler Paisley Drive Deluxe. We're going to take a look at its price tag, its specs, its weights and measurements, and just all that this pedal can do, and it can do a whole lot. But before all that, I just want to remind each and every one of you that if at any point you enjoy anything that I talk about or you enjoy the show at any point, hit the follow button on Spotify and leave us a review. It really does help out the channel, and I'm trying to get this show to 100 followers by the end of June. If we can make that happen, I have a very, very special episode planned out that I'd love to make happen, but I can't do it without your help. Also, this just in, we're now on YouTube, so hello, YouTube! Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. My prayer is that God would make this show a resource for worship leaders everywhere, but especially for those of us who lead worship in smaller church-based settings. And with all that said, let's get started. So let me start out with a bit of a confession that if you've been listening to the show for a while, you already know. But if you're new, this is new to you. I'm a huge fan of country music. It's not just worship music that God has used to make me who I am. I love the genre, and it's through that love that I found out about this pedal. And I'm a huge Brad Paisley fan. I think he's one of the best guitar players of this generation, and he's had a massive influence on me as a musician and how I sing. And so when I discovered that he didn't just have a signature guitar, but he had a signature overdrive, I knew I'd have to have one at some point in my life. And this is the second iteration of that pedal, and I love this thing so much. Now, I've had my Paisley Drive for a long time now, actually since 2022, and it's been out for years before that, and I've used it a ton, and that's because of its versatility. This is actually 2 pedals in one. This pedal marries the legendary Wampler Underdog Overdrive with the Paisley Drive, and they put them in one pedal with 2 separate foot switches. This pedal has a mid-range focus in its overall sound, and I'm going to try to showcase that when I get to the playing sample for y'all. Now let's go over what this pedal is at its core. Strap in, because there's a lot going on here. This is a 2-stage overdrive pedal, similar to the Full-Tone Full Drive 2 or the Strymon Riverside or the legendary and iconic King of Tone overdrive. It has 2 separate drive circuits, with the left side, Channel 1, being the Underdog circuit, a now discontinued limited edition pedal that Brian Wampler created in honor of a friend of his who was fighting breast cancer, and then Channel 2, the right side, being the original Paisley Drive, which you can purchase by itself if you don't want access to the Underdog side of the pedal. Each side has its own set of controls and its own set of inputs and output jacks. Let's start with the Underdog side. The Underdog has a 3-band EQ, including bass, middle, and treble controls, in addition to its gain and level controls, and it's the higher gain of the 2 channels. This side gets distorted really quickly, but it sounds super awesome for more rock-oriented songs that have a higher gain to them. The Paisley Drive has very simple controls, a level control, a gain control, and a tone control. So it's laid out like so many overdrives out there, but this one has a secret. On either side of the pedal, there are 2 small buttons, one for changing the voicing of the pedal, and the other for adding a fat sound to the overall EQ. It thickens up the signal and adds more gain, and the voicing switch actually offers a scooped mid-range, and you can really hear the Brad Paisley sound out of it once you mess with it enough. And it does sound really, really good. Each side has its own dedicated foot switch for turning the respective channel on or off, and there is one additional switch on the pedal, and this is where things get a little bit complicated. This switch selects which channel will come in first in the signal chain. For example, you could choose if you want the Underdog side to stack into the Paisley Drive side or vice versa. I prefer to run the Paisley into the Underdog to put the lower gain side first and then run that into the higher gain Underdog when the need arises. To allow for this, like I said, the Paisley Drive offers 2 quarter-inch jacks for each channel, and these are not for stereo output, but again, for selecting which combination you want your overdrives to stack into one another. It's a genius bit of technology, and I think that deserves way more credit than it gets. Now that we've gone over the controls, let's talk about the Paisley Deluxe's weight, measurements, and of course its price tag. The Paisley Deluxe is powered by a 9-volt power supply or a 9-volt battery, which again is a great feature, and I love when pedal companies include this as an option and they don't make it mandatory for a pedal to be powered by a 9-volt power supply. even though most of us do tend to run just a 9-volt power supply through the pedal. It just makes life a lot easier to not have to buy batteries. The Paisley Deluxe measures a height of 1.5 inches by a width of 4.5 inches and a depth of 3.5 inches. So this is around the standard size for a dual control stomp box of this kind. It has a wider footprint because of the dual controls, so that's something to keep in mind if space is a big factor in deciding what pedals go on your pedal board, and it has a weight of 1.25 pounds. Now for the big question. What's the price tag like? You can order the Paisley Deluxe directly from the Wampler website at the time of recording for $259.97, and that's the going retail price for a new one from any of the big musical retailers of the world. I purchased mine in 2022 for about $170 in the used market, and I can't stress this enough. The new price is a little bit expensive for some people, but this show has always been about helping you find the right gear for your individual budget. And that's why I'm always happy to recommend buying used gear whenever you can. If you have the money to spend on a new one, definitely do it. If you don't, do your research, and you might be able to pick one up for a really good price just like I did. Mine's going to have a little bit of inflation adjustment applied to the price because, again, I bought it in 2022, and $170 then might not be what it is now. I didn't do the conversion, but it's just something to keep in mind that you can find these used for a really good price if you look hard enough. So why did I want to talk about this particular overdrive, and not just because I'm a Brad Paisley fan? I wanted to talk about it because it has some incredible utility and application for worship music. So many worship leaders, myself included, like to have 2 separate stages of overdrive for different songs, and most of the time, that's through 2 different pedals. The nicest thing about the Paisley Deluxe is that it puts 2 pedals in one, and you can stack them however you want. In a way, it's a space saver, even though it's a little bit bigger than having 2 separate pedals. But here's the thing, you can stack them however you want. As I said, I run mine with the Paisley Drive into the Underdog, lower gain to higher gain, and I think it sounds great for just about everything in every song that I play. The thing I've noticed about the Paisley Drive side is that it's very touch sensitive, which is just how I like my overdrives. I like to set them pretty clean with a decent amount of gain, not an insanely high amount like heavy distortion. I just like it to have some grit to it, and I'll set it, and then I let how hard I play break up my signal. The Underdog, I just set at a moderate gain level, and then I turn it on for huge lead riffs. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to be using the Paisley Drive as my only overdrive and the Underdog as my second stage. I'm playing my PRS McCarty. I'm on the bridge pickup, by the way, if you're wondering, and I'm using my Universal Audio Dream 65 Reverb as my amplifier. That's going directly into my Focusrite Scarlett recording software, and I'm using Audacity to record. I'm going to do a demo of each side of the pedal individually, starting with the Paisley Drive, then I'll switch to the Underdog, and then I'll run the Paisley into the Underdog so you can hear the difference. Check this out. We're starting out with the Paisley Drive. Oh, I love this overdrive so much. There's a reason this has been on my board as long as it has, and I do rotate it in and out when I need to, but I love this thing so much, and it never, ever gets old. I should point out, y'all, I'm not using the mid-scoop. I'm not using the fat switch. I'm just running it just as a regular overdrive, and it sounds so good. Now, let's move on to the Underdog so you can really hear some gain from this thing. Woo, that's quite a difference. That's some serious gain, but with a bit of country twang thrown in there. You can hear the country/southern mid-range in this thing just at a lot higher gain, and oh my goodness, it sounds so good. Now then, let's hear the Paisley Drive into the Underdog, and let's really kick this thing off. Here we go. Oh, man, that's sustained, and oh my gosh, this thing sounds so good. I can't stop saying it. What can I say other than wow? This thing absolutely rules. I love this pedal so much, as if that wasn't plain as day from the moment I started talking about it. This was the first higher end style overdrive that I ever bought myself, and I use it all the time. I think for musicians that are looking for a pedal that can do 2 stages of overdrive in one, this is definitely one to consider. I don't have a true single coil guitar right now. Otherwise, I'd love to show you how great this guitar sounds with single coil pickups, because it gives you some even more amazing sounds, and it sounds great with humbuckers, as you've heard. I love having a full EQ setup on the Underdog side. It lets you sculpt the exact sound you're looking for, and I love how simple the Paisley Drive is. It's a standard overdrive with a few extra features like the voicing switch and the fat switch, which, again, I didn't use them in this demo, but I can really see the application for them. And they do sound really good. They just don't click with me as much, but it sounds so good, I do have to recommend it. But let me ask you all now, what did you think of the Paisley Drive Deluxe? Have you ever tried one for yourself? Have you ever seen one in the wild? Because you don't see them all that often. That's why I considered it a hidden gem. What's your favorite overdrive? Do you use a 2-stage overdrive at all? If so, which one? If not, why not? What's another hidden gem I should talk about on the show? Let me know your suggestions and thoughts in the comments, because I'd love to hear from y'all. And so, everybody, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Small Church Musicians Podcast. I pray that this episode has been of some help and entertainment to you all out there, and my prayer is that God would use this show to become a resource for all worship leaders out there, but especially to each and every one of my fellow small church-based worship leaders. You can help me out here by following the show on Spotify, on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, and all the social media, because I'm always posting new stuff, and leaving us a review when you listen in. And if you're following on YouTube, to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode at any point and you want to hear more from me. I'd love to see this show reach 100 listeners by the end of June, and if we can do that, I have a very special episode planned out that I'd love to make happen. But again, I can't do it without your help, and I really want to make it happen, everybody. As always, friends, remember, we're all working with a unique and individual set of circumstances, and there are so many challenges and so many difficulties and so many questions that we have to deal with and we face, and not just as worship leaders, but as Christian people. But you need to know that you are not alone. You need to know that God has called each and every one of us to lead his people in worship, and that's an awesome and humbling responsibility. But please, please know, friends, you have resources, you have friends, you have allies, and you have ways forward. And so until next time, everybody, I've been Justin, and I'm a small church musician, and I'll see you next time. Have a great week.